Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The message reads like this. Hello, Brother Nashi, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, I am a young lady who is currently staying in Europe. My brother, when I look at my relatives, including my own grandfather, he was a man who was wealthy. My own grandfather was really wealthy. He had a lot of wives, and when my grandfather passed away, my father, he had so many wives that we could not even count them. My grandfather, he was the one who went out to seek all of these charms that made him to become a ritualist. But the unfortunate part was that each and every evil spirit that is now attacking our family, they have decided that all the generational curses, any curse that was brought into the family by my late grandfather, they then placed it on me. The reason as to why they chose me above all of his offspring, it is because of the way that I was born. When I was born into this family, my brother, even though I didn't choose to be born this way, I was born out of wedlock, and then everyone in the family, they started hating my mother, they started hating my father for the decision that he had taken. Well, in the church at the church where we attend, if you are a man, there is a prophet that can come to you. Then the prophet will say, God has showed me that you are supposed to get married to such and such a person. It does not matter if you have one wife or two wives or three wives. If this is what the prophet has said, then you are supposed to go and get married to that young woman. In our church, a lot of young women are married when they are still very, very young, even when they are underage, as long as the prophet will say that this is what the Lord has told me, then you are not allowed to refuse that woman. This is what happened to my father. After my father wanted to get married again, after he had been remarried so many times, my father had fallen in love with my mother. Well, as for my mother, she was not attending this same church that my father grew up in attending. Then this meant that there was a big argument that started happening between my mother and my father's family. Then they hated my mother as if she wanted to convert my father going so that she can start attending another church. Well, when my mother gave birth to me, my grandparents, they forced my mother to give up her child, who was me. So I ended up being raised by my grandmother. But life was really difficult. Life was difficult because my father, he had so many kids. Each and every woman was busy fighting for her own child. My mother was not there to fight for me. My mother never got the opportunity to see the type of a life that I was having. All that she knew was that my grandparents, they were rich enough to take care of me. As for my grandfather, what he had done is that he had bought a house in the suburbs. So after he had bought that house in the suburbs, he had spoken with this other neighbor of his and convinced him to sell his house to him. So what they did is that my father ended up having two houses, but these two houses, they had one single. So my father ended up having this very big yard because he converted those two houses and they became like one, and he ended up building more cottages in these suburbs where we grew up staying. It is like those suburbs that have very big stands and they are quite expensive. That is where we grew up staying. So my grandfather then built a lot of cottages so that his sons, when they will be getting married, each one amongst their wives will have their own small cottages. Some, they had 2 rooms, some had 3 rooms, depending on how big your family was. As for my father, he never grew tired of getting married. He kept on getting married over and over again because this is the rule of the church, that whenever a prophet will come to you and say, I have seen in my dream, God has showed me in my dream that you see this young lady right here, she is supposed to become your wife, then you have to get married to that young woman. So my brother, like amongst my grandfather's relatives, I was the one whom he favored the most. I was the only one who was allowed to live with my grandparents. The other ones, they were staying with their mom. Even my grandparents, my brother, there was a time when they told me that they had taken the evil spirits as well as the good spirits that follow our bloodline, just like generational curses. Those generational curses, those curses, they were called out, those spirits, they were called out, and they were placed on top of my head so that they can forever possess me. If there is any curse that wants to do something bad in the family, it has to come to me. Then it will finish off whatever it wants to do with my body. I am just like a vessel for evil spirits. And whenever it is time for us to renew our covenant, even though me and most of my cousins, we are staying here in Europe, but we have to fly back to Africa. When we fly back to Africa, we then have to follow and observe those traditions that our grandparents taught us. I fly from Europe and I return back to Africa. My brother, we have our gatherings in the suburbs, and when you just pass through, when in the area where we'll be having our small gathering, you will think that this family is just doing a small family get together, but a lot of witchcraft will be taking place. We can even slaughter a cow without the neighbors even realizing that we are actually slaughtering a cow. We can even slaughter a goat or a sheep, and after slaughtering whatever animal that we would have slaughtered, blood is taken, and after blood has been taken, they speak again like my relatives, my elder brothers and sister. They will call out to the spirits, like the spirits that causes generational curses, the ones that my grandfather had a covenant with. Then they will invite those spirits again to come back into my body, to possess my body. They do these things because they are afraid that if they do not keep up with this covenant, these generational curses will start attacking them as well as affecting their own kids. So they try to protect their own families by making me to suffer. Since I was the one who grew up without having a parent. As for my father, I can say that he was never there for me anyway, because he was focusing on his kids, the other ones that had their mother's presence. I was more like an orphan. Most of the things that happened to me, they are quite traumatic. They traumatize me even up until today. There was this other time after my grandfather had passed away. Well, when my grandfather passed away, as per our tradition, my grandfather's coffin was brought back to the house where I grew up at. Then when his coffin was taken indoors, instead of the coffin being placed in the dining room, what happened was that he was taken first to the bedroom. When he was taken to the bedroom, then they made me to stay with my grandfather's dead body. They removed him from the coffin. It was really traumatizing to see my grandfather lying like that, as dead as he was. They placed him on the bed. They placed him on the bed for a couple of hours. It still gives me sleepless nights, because when they removed him from the coffin, they told me that I had to sit right next to the bed as I was watching him, and they all left the bedroom and they left me alone with that dead human being just lying on that bed. It felt like it was more. When they did this to me, they left me for hours and hours, and it was quite a terrible time for me. I am really scared because of these things that my relatives did to me. You can just imagine what was going through my little mind whenever I would look at my grandfather's bed, and whenever I would look at his dead body as it was lying on that bed. After the whole process was completed, no one gave me any explanation at all. What pains me the most is that most of my relatives who are wealthy, they use me as if I am a lucky charm. I have this other brother of mine. My brother is a big businessman. He has trucks and lots of contracts, and he is transporting chrome. The other thing that he did to me was that there was one day when he took me to this business meeting, he said that I should remain quiet, and he was and he was using me as if I was a lucky charm. Well, when we went there, he was able to strike a deal because of the spirits that are possessing my body. They use me as much as they want. They placed all the generational curses on me, my brother. Whenever I try to run away, I can see that there is no way to run to, because when I left home and when I came here to Europe, I thought that finally I was going to have peace of mind. But when I came here to Europe, I saw that as for my cousins, they have their own church that they started here in Europe, and they call themselves evangelists. And I feel sorry for the people who are attending their church, because they do not know that in our family, we still follow the traditions that were left behind by our grandfather of offering this blood to these generational spirits that causes these generational curses. Yet my family claims to be Christians. They claim to be evangelists, but they do hold these evil ceremonies. And my brother, whenever we speak with these spirits, they invite those spirits to come and possess my body. As I am walking, my brother, as I am walking, I feel that I am a vessel that is filled with evil spirit, evil demonic spirits that are constantly possessing my body. I have suffered because I was born in the wrong family, born at the wrong time, and born by a wrong woman, because I was born out of wedlock. And my grandparents, they hated my mother a lot because my father had chosen her over this other woman who was from the church where we grew up attending. I am suffering a lot, and I do not see an ending to my suffering. Dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by our dear sister. Quite a sad story. So that was the narration of that message that she sent to me. Yo.